record every element in the same table. It is possible, but it's not recommended. For example, the structure of a student is not the same structure as that of of marks. You can see a student, we may record a student ID, a name, and maybe gender and the age. But for the marks, it's a different story. When you come to marks, we record the what? The maybe mid exam, final exam, and maybe the teacher's comment, something like that. Or it may be a different structure of a what? Of a mark. So you find that we cannot record these two different objects in a what? In a same table. So we need to separate these tables. So that's why we always create something like this. For example, let me record mark. Let me create a new table called mark. So I'll call it mark, not marks. This one is different. Let me say it is mark, and this mark will have ID. For example, to have ID. And I'm going to make this ID automatically increment. So to make it automatically increment, you come to this side, AI auto increment. You check this, and then you make it a primary key. So it means that this key is a what? Is a primary key. So every mark will have its own what? Its own ID. So I'm going to, maybe on the marks we'll record maybe the mark value, or we can call it mark, or we can call it, value. And maybe each mark will have a value to be an integer, and maybe we'll have a what? Maybe subject. The subject maybe and the teacher's comment, or teacher's remarks. Teacher's remarks. So this entity for now, it's what will make a mark, right? So I'm going to create this table by simply clicking on where? On go. Here, save. Then this table will be created. So I have three tables, that of student and that of mark. So this is our table of student. Now let us we forget one thing. A student who did this mark. You see this mark, it does not have someone who did it. But remember, every mark must have a student who scored it, right?
Yes.
So there I'll have to come back to the structure of this table, and I do what? And I modify it. So to modify, you just click here, add one column here. So I'll just say maybe student ID, student underscore ID. That will be the ID of a student who did this mark. I'll make it an integer and still I'll save. So I have, if I come to this mark table, you'll find that you have the ID of this mark, the value of this mark, the subject that the student did to get this mark, the teacher's comment, and the what? And the mark itself. So we're going to write the SQL that is going to insert the marks first. That's going to insert the marks. You can as well use here the word in this insert, but using SQL it will be what? It will be a little bit faster. So to do that, let me open my text editor, Sublime Text, and I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call it student mark, or let me just call it mark.sql. So let me write here the SQL that is going to insert marks in this table. So you can, if you know the structure of our table like this is the structure of our table. We have the ID, the mark, the student, the subject, and the what, and the comment at the student ID. So I'm going to insert, for example, I'm going to say insert into, you can use capital letter, insert into. So if you don't want to specify the column that you want to insert into, you can just simply say insert into, then you put the table that you're inserting into. This is called mark. So I just put here mark, right? That's the name of our table. Then if you want to specify these columns the way they are, you can, for example, I want to insert, the ID will take care of itself. Remember, it is auto increment. We selected auto increment, so it will automatically increase. So I can just copy these, and then I put a bracket, and then let me zoom out a little bit. Then I put comma. It means that I want to insert into mark, and then value of a mark, and then the subject, and then the comment, and then the what? The student ID. Then after, write the word values. and then you put the values here. So in SQL, pressing enter, it will not affect the SQL as long as you're following the what? The structure. Even if I press enter, as long as I'm following the structure of SQL, even if I press enter, it will not mess up with anything. So here, in simple terms, just one line. It is just something like this. If I remove that enter that I entered, you see, it's just something like this. It has no issue. But what I want to do, I want us to our SQL to be broken, like to look a little bit structured, that we human beings, we can understand what is going on. Okay, so I'm inserting into what? Into marks, and this is what I'm inserting. Okay, then the values will follow. Now after doing that, I'm going to insert the values. So the values, we begin the value. Remember, this is the structure: value, subject, mark, and what. So let me say value. I put maybe 54. Remember, it's an integer. And then subject. Subject is supposed to be. Let me come to structure here. And then you see, I made a mistake. Subject is supposed to be a text, right? So let me edit. If you want to edit all of them, you just select what you want to edit, and then click on what? On change. So once you click on change, so here value will be an integer, no problem. Subject will be variable character, varchar, and I can say each subject will have at least 100 characters. So comment, I can leave it as a text because it will be like words. So, and then student ID, it will be an integer because it will be referenced from another table. You understand?
Okay.
Good.
Yes.
So we have that. So we start inserting. So we put here insert into mark value. The first one is value, that is an integer. Maybe subject, I put maybe mathematics. For example, I can put math like this. Then a comment, maybe I can say fair. And then I put the what? The student ID. So this student ID should be one of the students who is already existing here. Remember, a student ID is here. So this can be what? Can be a primary key. These are primary keys of a student table.
Yes.
So for you to enter mark, now for you to enter mark, so we shall reference the student ID from what? From the student table. So for the ID here, it must be one of the ID that is already existing in the student table. You understand?
Okay. Yes.
So what we'll do, I'll have to, for example, we'll have 5 students. So I have to enter one of these mark, one of ID. For example, I can say ID 1. Okay? So this is mark for what? For the student 1, mathematics, for example. Okay? Let me duplicate it. I hope it has no error. So let me first run this one and see if it is okay. So I'll copy it, and then I come to SQL. I select my database, and then I come to SQL here, SQL. Then I paste that code, and then I go. So if we execute successfully, I mean that everything is okay. I can go ahead and do what? And insert some other more marks. You see, it has been inserted, right?
Okay.
So I'll just duplicate this and make some other mark for other students so that you should have enough sample space. So ID maybe 53, maybe same math, maybe for student 1, for student 2, and then I can enter also for student 3. For student 3, so I can just change here, then 3, and maybe you can enter maybe 75. Let me put the last one. Let me enter for 5. Student 5. I can enter and create the maybe 41. Maybe this is student 4. And lastly, let me enter the math for the last student. Maybe student 4. I mean, maybe enter maybe 14 math, and this is student 5. We had student 5, so I can copy this SQL and go and run it. Okay.
Yes.
So I'll click on my table and then come to SQL, and then I paste it here, and then I do what? I click on go, and you can see all the SQLs have been ran. So you have a sample space of what? Of marks here.
Okay.
You understood? Now the question is,
Yes.
we now need to do what? To select the marks, and do what? And present them. So to write a plain SQL that selects only marks, it is just simply select all from what? From marks.
Marks. Okay.
So I can copy. If I run this, it will just be given here. Okay, so everything's okay. So we can also select where? From what? From students. Okay. From students, and see if everything is okay. Select all from here, from students. Copy SQL, come and run it here, and then you will see, something is wrong. Select all from students. There is D missing, right? Like this.
Yes.
Everything is okay. Those are our students. Now we need to join these two so that we should get the information. So SQL, SQL, they already have a place where you can do what? Where you can select the mask. The marks. Join, they already have, you call it join, Join SQL.
Yes.
So this join will enable us to select from two tables and join them using primary key. But before we proceed to join, we have two things here. Let me open a word and I show you what is happening. Okay, I want to show you what is happening really. So you have two tables. One table is of student. I've gone too far. Okay, so we have two tables. One table is having student data and another table is having students marks data. So before we proceed, let us first understand what is a foreign key and what is a primary key. Okay? Are you following? Cannot hear you properly.
I'm following.
Okay, good. So, okay, so what is a primary key? A primary key is the unique key that we use to identify an element or a row in a certain table. For example, you see these IDs are increasing. So each mark has its own ID. So we use this primary key to identify this particular row in this what? In this table. So that's what we mean by primary key. There will be no any other row which is having the same what? The same ID. That's why you check the primary key. So it cannot allow that. And that's the meaning of a what? Of primary key. So each mark, even though it can have other things, whether the same or not same, for example, you would say fair, 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 fair. I can as well change that maybe good. Whether same or not same, but the primary key will never be what? Will never be same. So we use the primary key to uniquely identify an element or a row inside a word, inside a table. Then for example, if we come here to students also, we have another what? We have another primary key for this table of student. And this primary key of ID, their student can have same name. For example, see this student is having same name and same here, John Doe is appearing 2 times. But their primary key will make them unique and not allow them to have what? To have the same ID. So we can use someone's ID to uniquely identify that person in that particular table or that row in that particular table. So that's the meaning of primary key. Do you understand, right?
I understand.
Good. Now, another question is, now what is a foreign key? A foreign key is a key from another table. A key from another table that we relate. For example, it's a student who will do marks, right? So it means that without a student, a mark cannot exist. Because a mark cannot do itself, cannot be squared by itself. So it means that every mark, it has a what? It has a student. But not every student has mark. Because a student can exist without a mark. But every mark here, it must have a student. Otherwise, if a mark does not have a student ID, then it means that mark is what? Is invalid because no one scored it. You get the point?
Okay.
Aha.
I get it.
So it means that since this marks table depends on the student table, now this student ID is what we call a foreign key, because this ID, it must be for one particular student such that it is not scored by multiple students. Each mark should have its own student. So, and this is a primary key from the other table. Okay, so since it is a primary key from another table, we call it a foreign key in this table. You wanna pick a call?
I just want to pick a list.
Okay. I mean,
Hello. Yes. You are about to read the FCU.
okay, get the point.
I'm back.
Okay, so
Yes.
so you see, it means that this ID is dependent. Is depending on what? On students. Otherwise, if a student does not exist, then this ID will not be there. So this
Okay.
ID is what we call a foreign key, because we are borrowing it from another table. It is a foreign.
Table.
It's just like the word from the word foreigner, someone from outside. So it is from another
Okay.
table. That's why we call it a foreign key. And this one
Yes.
is here. It is a primary key when it is in this table. But since we are borrowing it from another table in the marks, is a what? Is a foreign key. So this table has a primary key here and a foreign key here. So we can
Okay.
use that foreign key and the primary key to do what? To join these two tables. I hope you understood now.
Okay.
So now, how do you
Understand.
join? How do you join? So to join, you can come here to W3 Schools and just read these notes. They are simple and simple to understand. So SQL have its own way of joining tables without any condition. I'll just show you. There are 3 joins, but I'll just show you one. So to join something, you can simply say select all from what? From, for example, from marks. Okay, so it means that this is, you're going to select from what? From marks. Okay, from
Marks.
what? From marks.
Okay. Okay.
Let us just select all. Assume that you want to select everything, right? So to select everything, just put
Yes.
star. Okay, so select all
Okay.
from marks. So it means that we are selecting everything from what? From a table of marks. Then we want to join
Okay.
this mark. Then you say inner join. Inner join means that it should return all the what? The columns that will be found. That is the meaning of inner join. If you want to learn deep, you'll go and
Okay.
look at left join and right join. So select all from what? From marks. Inner join, then you put students. So it should be joined with
Okay.
students. But we must say that there must be something that is related to each other. So that is linking the two. So what is linking the two?
Okay.
Is a student ID with a. So
And
what
then-
is linking these two tables? For example, for us here, the student ID
Yes.
here is being linked
Yes.
with this mark on this student ID here. So that by connecting these two, then we'll have the what? We'll have the a record of a certain student with this mark. So you say inner
Well,
join. You have a question?
yes. So, like for my table, because I was trying to make something similar to what you had made on concerning music streaming. So I have an artist. I have an artist and the song. Those are two tables.
Okay.
So I want to
let me finish.
retrieve.
Let me finish here. Then I'll also answer that also.
Okay.
Okay. I'm showing you this first join, and then I'll come to also that one. I'll show you. So
Okay.
at this point, I want to connect these two. So to connect these two, I can
Okay.
just select all from from what? From marks, inner join, students, and then I'm joining on marks. I mean here, so I'll have to put student. So I have to put what is two in common that will connect the
Okay.
two. So I can say marks. So
Okay.
if I say marks, it means that I'm basing on a what? On a marks columns. So I can say max dot, so max dot what? The student ID, because it's the student ID that owns this. So I say max dot student ID is equal to students dot what? Dot ID.
Okay.
So these two dot ID, here we renamed it ID, not student ID. Dot ID.
Okay.
So these two must be equal, or must be the same for one row to be displayed.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what it means. The two, the mark ID and the student ID must be the same for the two. I mean, this must be the same for that particular row to be displayed. So I'll copy that.
Okay.
Yeah, so if I come and run it, SQL here, I'm going to finish. So I paste it, I press enter, something is wrong. Marks, student ID, students, oh, I forget put D here. Okay, come and run SQL. So if I run it, oh, what's wrong? Studency. Oh, yeah, here it is, student ID, and there should be what? Mark the student ID, then students.id. Yeah, it is okay. What's wrong with it? Student.student.id, then student.id. Students, yeah. Why is it complaining? Okay, if it fails, I'm going to show you another way how to do it. This is student.id. Let me run it, SQL. It is showing SQL table, school students. Am I not writing that student properly? Student properly. Oh, it is like this. I make a mistake here. Yeah, I was not writing properly. Okay, marks, then student ID, and non-columns. Oh, it's supposed to be mark, not marks. Make a silly mistakes. Remember, we are using the table of mark, right? So if I run it, now you can see it has brought all the results. Can you see? It has brought the ID, the student, also even the student information. Can you see?
Yes, I've seen.
So it has selected from what? From two different tables. So that's one way, using the join. But the most common way that we don't use that one most of the time, because you can see even here the columns are being duplicated. We don't use that all of the time.
Yes.
Most of the time we select like this. If I want to select from two tables, I can simply, another way, I can simply select all from where? From marks, comma. So I write all, you see clearly, you should be attentive here. I'm selecting from marks, at the same time I'm selecting from students. Yeah, so I'm selecting from two tables. Select from marks, comma, students. So it is from two students. So if I put a semicolon here, it will run it. So I'm selecting from what? From two tables, you can see, right? So if I come and run this SQL, you'll see it has brought the result. But there's a problem with these results, okay?
Can I just answer this?
Okay.